Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located today. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Elliot Harper, and I'm a Senior Marketing Technology Architect at CloudKettle. I've been working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud for almost a decade now. I've written books on Marketing Cloud and very active in the user community, and I'm really excited to be presenting this final of the fourth of a four-part series on mastering Einstein for Salesforce Marketing Cloud to you today. Now, before we begin, I do want to explain this is a live webinar and I'm really keen to answer your questions, but to help the session flow, I won't be pausing to accept questions during my presentation. Instead, you can go and ask questions on the Q&A panel, which you'll find in the tray in your Zoom application. And my colleague and a partner at CloudKettle, John McGinley, will review them, and then I'll answer them at the end of the session. So let's begin. In this session, I'll be introducing Einstein email and web recommendations for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I'll provide an in-depth review of Einstein recommendations, explain how it works, and highlight areas that you need to consider when using this feature. And finally, I'll provide an insight into upcoming product enhancements that we can expect to see in future releases. Firstly, how can you access Einstein in Marketing Cloud? Well, I've explained this in my previous webinars, but to recap, Einstein features are available both from the Einstein menu and from Einstein Overview, which appears on the Einstein menu in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. This provides a dashboard indicating overview metrics for each enabled Einstein feature, and also indicates which features haven't been enabled. Moving your cursor over each metric reveals the related summary data. And you can also conveniently navigate to Einstein features right from the Einstein Overview menu. Now, before we get started with Einstein email and web recommendations, I think it's important to first clarify some terminology. If you've been using Marketing Cloud for some time, you may have noticed that the naming convention of this feature has iterated over the years, and it's important to understand what these products and features are that we're actually referring to today. Predictive intelligence, along with predictive email and predictive web, are legacy application names, which were inherited when ExactTarget acquired a company named iGo Digital in 2012. These product names are no longer in use, but if you hear of them, then they're actually referring to what we know today as Einstein email and web recommendations. Now, Marketing Cloud applications are generally grouped into Studio and Builder applications. Until recently, Einstein email and web recommendations were available under the Personalization Builder menu in Marketing Cloud. However, the menu has now been reorganized and you'll find these applications appear under the Einstein menu. Einstein Recommendations is a collective product name that refers to email and web recommendations respectively, which we'll discuss in this session. So, what is Einstein Recommendations for Salesforce Marketing Cloud? Well, in summary, Einstein Recommendations delivers the next best product, content, or offer to every individual through product and content recommendations for email and web. And it does this by obtaining insights from customer interactions on your e-commerce website. With every page view, category view, search items, cart activity and purchase, Einstein learns the preferences and interests of each individual subscriber and website visitor. Additionally, customer attributes such as location, gender, and other profile data can be combined with behavioral data and business rules to recommend products or content that customers might be interested in, and it does all this in real time. But how does Einstein Recommendations actually work? Well, Einstein provides product and content recommendations through a four-step process. Firstly, Einstein collects web browsing behavior by the inclusion of client-side JavaScript collect tracking code on your website, which is used to monitor key variables and events on your website at the user level. Then, from this harvested data, Einstein builds an affinity model for each customer or website visitor by scoring their interest across different attributes and their browsing sessions across devices. Einstein then creates a profile matrix, which is based on a weighted affinity levels by attribute, to identify what product or content that individuals are most likely interested in, based on the collected behavioral data and matching profile attributes of similar individuals. Finally, Einstein Recommendations enables you to include product or content recommendations in an email or on a web page, driven by predefined scenarios and rules, which we'll look at shortly. Now, it's important to mention that Einstein is able to provide recommendations both for known and unknown individuals. That is, when an individual visits your website and has not yet created an account or authenticated, Einstein still collects their behavioral data and is able to serve relevant product or content recommendations. And once they become known, for example, they log in or create an account on your website to make a purchase, then their anonymous data is mapped to their contact profile. Additionally, if they have browsed your website on multiple devices, for example, a desktop and mobile device, then these anonymous sessions are merged together once they authenticate and become known. And Einstein recommendations are configured at a business unit level. This allows you to configure and integrate individual websites into separate business units in your Marketing Cloud account. Let's now briefly review the different types of behavioral events that can be tracked on your website using this collect tracking code. The page view method is fired when a customer or website visitor views a product page on your website. The category view method is used to track when a category page is viewed. The inside search method is used to store search terms for an individual. A track cart items method is called when a user adds or removes items from their shopping cart. And the clear cart method is used when a user manually removes all items in their cart. A track conversion event is fired when a customer has purchased items in their cart, so typically you'd include this code on an order confirmation page. A user rating method enables you to store ratings that contacts assign to products on your website. And finally, a user info method enables you to append additional user-defined attributes to the contact, which we'll discuss next. These methods are invoked by client-side JavaScript collect code on your website. This is typically implemented using a tag management system like Google Tag Manager, Telium, and others, as tag management systems provide an easier way to deploy and maintain JavaScript code snippets across your website. User profile attributes are an additional set of data that can inform Einstein about an individual. For example, their gender, location, or member status level. In turn, based on the defined scenario, which we'll discuss next, Einstein can use this data to deliver recommendations based on other users with matching profile attributes. Additionally, profile attributes can be used as rules to suppress recommendations based on specific attribute values. Recommendations are determined from a set of predefined scenarios. These can be categorized as reference item, user data, and site data scenarios. Reference item scenarios require one or more specific reference items in order to return a recommendation. For example, the scenario named bought refers to contacts or website visitors who bought an item passed in the parameter also bought these items. Therefore, you could use the bought scenario to return recommendations on a shopping cart page. User data scenarios are based on a user's profile and personal site behavior. For example, the scenario bought last cart refers to contacts or visitors who bought the last item added to the cart also bought these items. And site data scenarios are based on the collected aggregated site behavior. No information is personalized at the user level. For example, the top sellers scenarios includes recommendations on top selling products across a website based on total units sold. While Einstein automatically determines the next best product recommendation or content to display in your email or on your website, Einstein Recommendations Rule Manager lets you refine what recommendations are displayed. 3 configurable sections are available when creating rules. Channels and pages refer to where to apply the rule, specifically which channels, that is, web or email, the recommendations apply to. And you can choose to apply these rules to specific recommendation blocks or all blocks. Events and attributes relate to when the rule is applied, based on the contact's or visitor's behavior. You can choose to apply the rule to specific products or related attributes. For example, if a customer is viewing a product with a category of shoes, or the website, or has visited the website in the past 5 days. And actions refer to how you want to apply the rule. For example, you may want to inject a product that you're trying to clear from your warehouse, or emphasize specific product categories. Any recommendation rules that you define will override or infer the recommendations determined by Einstein. Now, Einstein Recommendations is already available on most Marketing Cloud accounts. Email Recommendations is available in all editions except Basic. And Web Recommendations is available in Corporate and Enterprise editions, and is also a paid option for the Professional edition. There are associated supermessage charges for Einstein Recommendations. When a recommendation block is included in an email and the email is opened, then this counts as one supermessage, regardless of the number of product recommendations within that block. For example, if you send an email with an email recommendation block to 10,000 subscribers and have a 30% open rate, then this counts as 3,000 supermessages, in addition to the supermessages used to send the email. Web recommendations count as 2 supermessages per block, again, regardless of the quantity of products included within the block. Einstein Recommendations is self-installable. Simply select Email Recommendations or Web Recommendations from the Einstein menu, and the Setup wizard will guide you through the 3-step process, as you can see on this screen. Well, let's now take a look at Einstein Recommendations in action. Now, we've already added our collect tracking code to our website and configured the import of our catalog file. So now let's start by including product recommendations to display on our website. We'll open Web Recommendations from the Einstein menu. From this overview page, we see all the existing recommendation blocks that have been created for our website. We can edit an existing recommendation block or create a new one. Let's start by choosing the recommendation block that's currently used on our homepage. Now, this Areas section that we see here includes the div ID value, in this case product rec, that we're using to inject recommendations on our website using JavaScript. We can also set the number of recommendations that we want to appear in this div, either to be a fixed number of products or even a range, say between 3 and 6. There are 2 snippets of HTML code that we need to include on our page in order to display the recommendation block. And if we click this Get Code button, we see a link to a JavaScript file up the top here and an empty div container that matches the ID value we defined previously. We just need to include this on our page, which we've already done. So if I go and visit our website here, I'm just going to go and view the page source and scroll down somewhere in here. There we have. So there's the HTML code that we got from that Get Code page. And right down the bottom, we see the JavaScript code that's used here. Now, let's configure our recommendation content area. I'm going to go and head over to the Scenarios tab. And here we define the recommendation scenarios that we want Einstein to use to determine product recommendations. These scenarios are described in Salesforce help documentation, which you can see here. For example, this first one, the last views merge scenario, will return product recommendations based on other customers or website visitors who viewed any of the last 7 items viewed by the active customer or visitor. These scenarios are evaluated in the order they appear. Einstein will attempt to return 4 product recommendations from the first scenario, which is the number that we set previously, and if it's unable to return 4, then it will try the next scenario, use its affinities, and so on. And we can also go and reorder these scenarios. The editable text field here that we see here refers to the heading to appear above the scenario. And if we scroll down the bottom here, we've got this waterfall option. So when the waterfall recommendation option is enabled, which it is at the moment, then instead of attempting to return all product recommendations for a given scenario, Einstein may return recommendations from different scenarios. For example, if only 2 product recommendations are returned from the first scenario, Einstein will display these products and then try the second scenario to return additional unique recommendations and so on. So it could pick one product from the second scenario and then maybe another one from user affinities further down. Let's now take a look at recommendations in action. Now, I'm going to go ahead and visit our website here, and on our home page, here is the recommendations block that we set up earlier. Now, if I start interacting with this website, so let's say, I don't know, what should I buy today? I'll go and I think I need some, now let's actually go and choose some shoes, I think. So go to footwear, and I do like the look of those shoes. They look quite stylish. So let's see, yeah, I don't know whether actually that's quite my color. How about something a bit fiery like this? Not quite sure on that one either. I'll go and have a look at another one. Actually, this looks quite snazzy. So, yep, that's me. I think I'll go and buy one of those. I'll go and add that to my cart. And then while I'm here, I might just go and have a look at a couple of other products. Let's have another look at footwear, and I'll go and maybe some hiking boots. Do they have any? Oh gosh, they look quite nice, don't they? So, yep. I'm not quite sure about that one. How about one more product? Let's go and have a look at jackets. That's very nice. Look, why don't I go and buy that too? Some are medium size. I'll go and add that to my cart. Now, when I go and return to the home page, we can start to see more relevant product recommendations appearing here based on my browsing behavior. And Einstein recommendations also includes a feature where we can review the website behavior for an individual. So if we just jump back into here and click on this reporting page and leave, we won't save those changes. Now if I select contacts, I now have an option to load my profile, which is going to return the active session identifier for my current web browsing session. And here we can see all the product pages that I viewed and some of the items that I've added to my cart. There's actually one I added previously, and the 2 items there. So from this page, we can also see the affinity of the website visitor based on their behavioral attributes and drill down into those categories. So from this matrix here, I go and click on category, you can see that I'm interested in men's footwear and men's jackets based on my browsing behavior. And men's footwear has a higher affinity here, and you can see a breakdown of the affinity scoring on the right-hand side here. Now let's take a look at email recommendations. So I'm going to go ahead and select email recommendations from the Einstein menu. Email recommendations provide comparable functionality to web recommendations, but display recommendations in an email instead of on a web page. Selecting email recommendations from the menu enables us to create recommendation blocks to include in our email. And here is a list of existing recommendation blocks that we've already started working on. Let's open one, maybe weekly newsletter recommendations. Now, this behavior, as I said before, it's similar to web recommendations. However, this first step generates static images of each product in our catalog from HTML code that we define. So if we go and select one of these, I'll go and click Edit. I kind of like this layout here. And I can actually go and choose to go and customize what's going to be in the image. We've got the image thumbnail here. And let's actually say that we want to go and change this this color to green. I'll just go and change this green and go and click Preview. We can see that changes. So we can change the size and the font used, and define. Maybe we want to go and add a short description on in this image. Now, clicking the Save and Publish button will pre-generate images used by this display. Let me exit out of here. I'm going to exit without saving. Now let's go and take a look at scenarios. Now this scenarios page is very similar to web recommendations, where, as before, we can order the different scenarios that are used for evaluation. And just like web recommendations, we can also enable waterfall recommendations that I explained earlier. Finally, this layout page enables us to define how many recommendations to display in our email and how they should appear. So I may want to just display 6 recommendations in this grid layout. To add recommendations to your page, you can either choose to copy the generated HTML code by clicking on this. Let me just discard these changes. I'll just go and click on this Get Code button. Let's go. Maybe I do have to go and save that. If I just exit out of this, I'm keen to go and show you this. So maybe I'll click on the Get Code. Let me go back. Of course, let's go back into Weekly Newsletter. I'll go and select that one. I think that was the problem. I didn't go and choose a display. So now if I go to Layout and and now I click Get Code and maybe Save and Get Code. And here we can see the HTML code that I can go and use. We can also choose an available recommendation logic from the Einstein content block in Content Builder, which provides a very convenient method to add recommendations to our email without copying and pasting code. But note, this generated code can further be customized and adapted to suit your email layout, so you don't have to use this table-based layout. To create our custom rules, simply select Rule Manager from the navigation menu. Here, we can create a new rule or open an existing one. Let's go and open up this first rule. Now here, we choose which recommendation block to apply this rule to, either to a specific email or web recommendation block, like in this case, maybe this one here, we can drag this over, or maybe all of them, maybe all the web recommendations, maybe all of the email recommendations, or both. Next, we use the Events and Attributes panel. Let me just go and open that here. To choose when to apply the rule. Here, we're looking for a specific purchase. We can now choose other events or attributes, maybe based on their visits. I'll drag this over here and say greater than 10 days ago. And let me just go and drag something else, maybe another one of, say, a category, for example, and include shoes. And we can now go and also set logical operators when using multiple events or attributes as or and operators to determine how this expression should be evaluated. And note that nested operators are also supported, so we might want to make this an OR condition, for example. Finally, we need to determine how to apply the rule from the Action panel. So let's go ahead and do that. For example, we may want to emphasize items with a certain attribute value. So I'm going to drag over emphasize here. And so maybe we want to go and select a certain product category and give a more higher weighting to infer the recommendations that Einstein returns. Now, if we go back and visit that contacts page once again, I'll just go and load my profile. From this page, we can also preview the different email recommendations that will appear to subscribers based on the recommendation logic and rules that we've configured. So it enables you to, check that these recommendations look accurate before you go and send emails. Now, let's discuss some considerations when using Einstein recommendations. Retail and e-commerce websites are typically well suited to Einstein recommendations, specifically retailers with a large number of products. Note that Einstein won't serve optimal recommendations if you only offer a few products. Einstein recommendations can be used for other use cases and industries, but just remember that the catalogue is SKU-based. For example, travel companies don't have SKU-based products. Instead, they use spot pricing based on destinations and dates, or cruises with varying start and end ports and cabin configurations. Essentially, Einstein needs a SKU with an assigned price. You can use Einstein recommendations with these other verticals, but you may need to adapt your product catalogue to fit the recommendation engine. For example, instead of having several thousands of products for different destinations and dates, you may want to reduce this to a few hundred, based on common attributes. Another consideration is that tags, which are the attribute values that you include in your catalogue file, are evaluated globally. For example, a product with an age attribute of 8 will be evaluated against other products with matching attribute values. So, another unrelated product may have a size attribute of 8. As such, you may need to normalize these values before adding them to the catalogue file. For example, by adding a prefix of size underscore to size attributes to ensure that they're not evaluated in the same as other fields in your catalogue with matching values. And remember that Einstein largely relies on the attributes in your catalogue to determine recommendations. It won't work this out on its own. So you need to ensure that your catalogue features a good taxonomy that aligns with your product or content attributes. Additionally, having a broad set of companion products for each product will help return optimal recommendations. And note that there's a learning phase after adding the collect code to your website to allow Einstein enough time to build a training model based on your website behavioral data. Salesforce recommends 30 days, but this will ultimately be determined by how many customers and visitors interact with your website. If you have low traffic volumes, then you may need to allow more time before accurate recommendations are returned. Einstein recommendations are also passed as raw data gathered from your collect tracking code into Contact Builder. The data is organized into different data extensions. These data extensions that we see here include product data from your product catalog, page views, purchases, and more. You can use these data extensions to further segment your audience. For example, when a customer or contact completes a purchase on your website, then you can use this data extension in a query activity to create an entry source for a post-purchase journey. These data extensions are also automatically included in your contact model, so you can use this as contact data for decision splits in your journeys. Einstein recommendations also offers triggers. Triggers listen for specific user interaction or an event on your website, and when this occurs, the data is transferred to Marketing Cloud as a text file and imported into a data extension. There are a few different types of triggers available for Einstein recommendations, which include abandon browse, abandon cart, and affinity change. These triggers are fired based on a predefined execution priority and a series of rules. You can then use the resulting populated data extensions to further segment your contacts or identify new audiences, for example, an abandoned cart journey. Now, I need to mention that these triggers are not currently enabled by default and at the moment require professional services engagement for enablement. However, I'd like to share an enhancement that we can expect to see in an upcoming release. But before I do, of course, I need to remind you that Salesforce is a publicly traded company and you need to base your purchasing decisions on products or services that are already available. With that in mind, let's discuss a couple of roadmap items that we can expect to see shortly. Now, the abandoned browse and abandoned cart triggers will both be self-enabled in an upcoming release, so they won't require an additional service fee for engagement. These two triggers are very popular, and I can see that they'll be of great benefit to many Marketing Cloud customers. Well, thank you for attending the session today. I hope you now have a better understanding of Einstein email and web recommendations and how they work, and how you can start using this powerful feature to deliver AI-based product and content recommendations across channels. We now have actually plenty of time for questions, and I see there are already some great questions that have been popping up in the Q&A panel. So at this time, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, John McGinley, again as a partner at CloudKettle, to moderate them.
Perfect. Thank you, Elliot. Fourth and final one in the series, and I think probably the most questions. So
right, okay,
this is
good.
Exciting. We've got a couple of duplicates, which I'll do my best to paraphrase. And right off the top, like I've said before, the recording of this will be sent out 48 to 72 hours from now. And if you want to catch up on any of the previous ones, they are on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/cloudkettle. And with all that being said, I'm going to start with the last question that came in very close to the end, Karina. What's considered an affinity change?
An affinity change is based on user attributes. If a user has a stronger affinity to a specific category. So, for example, maybe I've just been looking or researching shoes for some time, but then I come back to the website later and start looking at a different product category, for example. That would indicate an affinity change. And so you may want to change the messaging used in your communications.
Perfect, thank you. Our friend Ruben, back with a couple of questions today. One of them was, how do you manage multiple currencies for the same product?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, and you can actually include localized string both for catalog attributes and currency values in your product catalog by adding additional localized fields. You just need to apply a specific naming convention prefix to these field names that includes their ISO country code. This is actually really well documented in Salesforce help, so you can just refer to that for more details, but it's absolutely possible. And again, as I mentioned before, along with other attributes in your product catalog. So maybe you've got product names and descriptions in different languages. And so when you do that and include the specific locale in your JavaScript snippet, it will go and return the appropriate language.
Perfect. Speaking of languages, does Einstein recommendations offer support for multiple languages?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So as I just mentioned, that in addition to currency values, it does do localized strings as well. And again, this is actually really well documented. So you can just search Einstein recommendations localization, and I think you'll quickly find it.
Perfect. Another question, can you include AMScript in your HTML when editing the displays used by email recommendations?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a great question. The answer is yes and no. So Einstein Recommendations doesn't use Outbound Mail Manager or OMM to render these images. OMM is the core interpreter used for messaging in Marketing Cloud. Instead, these images are actually generated outside of Marketing Cloud in a different platform altogether, actually running in AWS. However, Einstein Recommendations emulates the same syntax as personalization strings and AMScript. So you can include AMScript blocks and inline AMScript syntax pairs. For example, maybe you want to conditionally display a sale price if the item is on sale, but if it's not, you don't want to show that sale price. However, note that the operator syntax, that is for and or expressions, differs slightly from the core AMScript library and follows the JavaScript syntax. So you can refer to the Salesforce help documentation for supported AMScript functions and syntax, or check out my book, which I co-authored with Adam Spiggs, AMScript Guide, and it's documented there. But, yes, you can search for Einstein Recommendations AMScript and you'll go and quickly find those. And there's actually one AMScript function for user rating, I think, from memory, and several different personalization strings that you can go and use.
Perfect. No, that's a great answer. Thank you. I got a couple here from Ed. First one is, in web recommendation reporting, how do I reset the data so that it clears out all data used for testing and setup of tracking codes?
Yeah, I mean, you can go and I recommend probably deleting contacts. So now with the contact deletion, it's a great question. So certainly we can delete all the behavioral data. And of course, when we do so, that all of the related tracking data will be erased as well. So you can do that either through the UI or through, you can automate that through the API. And also potentially reach out to Salesforce help to or support to maybe do that in kind of one swoop. But typically what I do, and it is like a really valid question, that during that learning phase you've got several kind of test contacts, so you can easily identify them. You wouldn't have so more than 100, I'm guessing, and you can manually delete them one by one or kind of automate that through actually quite simply through the API. And that API function is included in the REST API documentation in Marketing Cloud.
Perfect, thank you. Another one from Ed, which is I also think another good question is, can Marketing Cloud unhash an MD5 email in a tracking code and match it to a subscriber?
No, yeah, and look, it's a really good question. So in order to go and pass that data about an individual, you need to go and call that user info event. So at that time, when that user becomes, or website visitor becomes known, or maybe as soon as they log on your website, you go and call that user info method, which includes their email address. Now, it's important to note that the value for this email address just can be a unique identifier for web recommendations. So it could be anything. It could be like a subscriber ID. But for email recommendations, it needs to be an email address. And that's because you'll observe that in Contact Builder, if you go into the predictive intelligence attribute group, I think it's called, you'll see that Einstein uses the email address as a relationship to build a relationship back to the contact. Now, I recognize that there are scenarios when you may not want to pass an email address from a client-side JavaScript over to Marketing Cloud, and that's because maybe if you hadn't gone and obfuscated that email address in by using kind of a tag management system, then it may be retained in a web browsing history. And an email address, of course, this is PII data. So, I mean, one scenario that, or one solution that I've implemented before, and again, this isn't this is an unsupported workaround, so please do this at your own risk. But just remember that this collect tracking code is just some JavaScript code. It's static. It's the same. It doesn't change for depending on your business unit or your MID or anything like that. So I've actually gone and you can go and take that collect code, and I've forked it and hosting it on a Cloud Page code resource file, which is published. And then what I'm actually doing is, in the user info, I go and set it to non-identifiable ID, specifically the subscriber ID, and pass that to the Cloud Page. Now, the advantage of that is that because we're using Cloud Pages, I can now go and use AmpScript or server-side JavaScript to go and, handle that incoming subscriber ID and intercept it, should I say, and then look up the corresponding email address and make that final request back to that iGo Digital endpoint to go and log that event. So that's one solution that I've come up with, and it actually works really well. A bit of a creative pattern there, but you can obviously go and, in short, intercept these requests by having your own kind of a local copy and also do some kind of other pretty creative things as well. Like I've gone and normalized, I've gone and also included the tracking conversion code on these scripts as well.
So possible follow-up, possible dovetail into what you were saying, but is it possible to combine the tracking used for recommendations with client preferences? And if so, how can we upload this data?
The tracking with client preferences. Absolutely. I mean, that's how you... with client preferences, yes, absolutely. I mean, that's actually how you do it. So let's say that my preference is, that is in my, on my website, I've indicated that I'm, maybe it's, say, a membership level, and I have a preference in skiing or outdoor sports or something like that. Then you can go and pass that along as key value pairs in that user info object when the customer goes and visits the site. So you only need to do this once, and I actually do it every time they go and authenticate. But if that value ever changes, then that data will be updated. And so, you can go and create as many kind of custom attributes as you want. That again will be used to match against known contacts with similar traits or attributes to return recommendations.
I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit here.
Sure.
This is a question from Natalie. And what's the difference between Interaction Studio and Einstein Recommendation?
I knew that question. Yeah, I knew that question was coming up when I said the next best product. I thought, look, I mean, these are two very different products. I'd say the core difference is that Einstein Recommendations is AI based, and that is it's using these through machine learning and these pre-built scenarios to determine what products to display. Interaction Studio doesn't do that. It's entirely rule based. It doesn't have AI or machine learning, and also. Recommendations, it's just for products or content or banner. I haven't really gone into content. I mean, content refers to, like, maybe you've got a blog and want to go and make recommendations on other articles someone might be interested in, or a banner would be like a website banner to display. These are different catalogs you can create. But whereas Interaction Studio, obviously the copy and messaging can completely change based on their interaction. So if anything, I'd say that the two are complementary.
Good answer. This came from an anonymous attendee, and you touched on super messages during your presentation. And I hesitate to ask from a financial perspective, I guess, but can you give any more information on what super messages are and when they get hit with additional super messages?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So in each Marketing Cloud edition, according to your contract, would include a certain number of super messages. You may have chosen to go and purchase additional super messages based on your estimated sending volume each month. And so as you go and send emails, so email send is counted as one super message, SMS send could be 30 super messages, typically depending on the country. A cloud page impression would be another super message, and so on. Then those counts are depleted, and it's the same with other features such as Einstein content selection. Also counts as a super message, or I think two super messages when an email. Yeah, two super messages when an email is opened. There's various different ways of depleting that. And if you go and now the important thing to note is that when you go and send an email, only when that email is opened by a subscriber will it count as one super message. And just to emphasize, as I explained before, it's just one super message per block or recommendation logic as per the email recommendation user interface. So if I've got two sets of recommendation blocks on my email, that will be two super messages when the email is opened. But there's no specific price tag. You can't say, it's half a cent or something, because it's
when in doubt, consult your contract.
Yes, indeed.
So Stan asked, and I'm gonna read his question, and
sure.
I think I understand what he's asking, but where catalog doesn't understand where a catalog comes from or how we generate it.
Yeah, what a fantastic idea. Yeah.
And I'm getting the data into the IGO data extension. So what do I need the catalog for?
Yeah, no, what a wonderful idea. And I didn't. And I do want to explain that this short presentation is part of a much larger 8-hour course that I've previously run on Einstein email and web recommendations. So there's a lot to it, and I appreciate I gleamed over that. So the catalog file is contains all of your product data that you're using to. It contains all of your product data. So it's a text delimited file that's either manually uploaded to Marketing Cloud or imported via an FTP process, or actually retrieved from a public URL, and those two can be done every 12 or 24 hours, or you can enable what are called streaming updates. And the product catalog file is important as it determines things like the product name, the product description, the price, and its availability. Whether obviously you don't want to return recommendations for products that are out of stock. That's uploaded separately, and you have different separate catalog files for products, categories, and banners. Content and banners. The most common, I'd say, is the product catalog. So again, it's a very straightforward process. But also bear in mind in that, and I hinted on this before, it's very important that you get your product catalog correct. And it's often not as simple as just taking an export from your ERP system of all of the products and just loading them up. There are maybe certain products you want to exclude, like free shipping might be a product, or maybe kind of a gift card or kind of certain things. You remember that Einstein uses the catalog and specifically the the values or tags within it to go and build a taxonomy. So you want to ensure that you have a kind of strong taxonomy of, this is the category and this is a subcategory. And you can actually have multiple values for one tag, like interest, for example. It might be hiking and outdoor sports, which are kind of tilde delimited. This is all very well documented, but it's a fantastic question. Thanks.
Yeah, Stan actually sent a comment through just to clarify or
Sure.
more specific for his case. They don't have products, but instead of blogs. So he's guessing it
Yeah,
would be
sure.
page title, page description, etc.
Yeah, so that's right. So, typically what I would have on my blog is I would generate perhaps an RSS feed or RSS style feed, which actually returns those values as CSV file, where you've got the name of your blog article, then you've got the URL to go and view that post. And then I'm trying to remember from memory the standard fields. This is documented, but also the tags that you assign to that blog post. You would have you'd have those as multiple values. So you can, using something like WordPress, quite easily go and programmatically go and generate this and have them available. It's a publicly accessible URL, and Einstein will go and retrieve that every 12 hours. Also note that, you can do and serve content recommendations. It does work. I'd say that Einstein recommendations is really more geared towards products, in that all the reporting is kind of based on prices. But there are also more limited scenarios kind of naturally. I think from memory, less than a dozen in comparison to the 52 different scenarios that we can choose from for product recommendations. But
perfect. Well, I'm going to just keeping track of time
Sure,
here. I don't
of
want to
course.
keep people too long, but I have a couple other quick hits for you, I think. Does recommendations dedupe, or do you run into an issue of different scenarios returning the same product ever?
No, I mean, you'd only have unique products in a single recommendation block. It wouldn't. So for example, if I have enabled waterfall recommendations, and it shouldn't anyway return duplicate products. But at the same time, you may want to exclude companion products from being returned, and you can do that from rules. So you say, well, these products are kind of too similar, then you can control that.
All right, I've got a very specific question for Marcos.
Sure.
And it's long.
Okay.
So they have Collect.js implemented within web recommendations to connect Commerce Cloud with Marketing Cloud, and the IGO data extension are populating the collected data correctly. However, we're not able to implement the abandoned cart feature since the information is considered as a behavioral trigger, and it requires Marketing Cloud professional services to implement the abandoned cart feature and pull the information from Commerce Cloud and bring it into Marketing Cloud to populate the PI data extension. That being said, do we have an alternative, or can you suggest an alternative to implement abandoned cart feature with the Commerce Cloud information? Yeah,
look, this is a great question, and I hinted this in the upcoming enhancements we can expect to see. So you're completely right that, and at the moment, you need to engage professional services to enable that abandoned cart trigger, and that's sometimes a kind of roadblock for some customers. It currently comes actually quite a high associated price tag, but I've been assured that we can expect to see in an upcoming release, again, forward-looking statements aside, that the ability to go and self-enable abandoned cart and abandoned browse will be available in an upcoming release. Now, I know this was slated for the July-August release. I didn't see it pop up in the release notes, so I don't know whether that's kind of slipped. But I know that it's if it's not in the upcoming release, we can expect to see that very soon. which is really exciting.
Terrific. Stefan asked, the email embed code included dynamic links that have an email address string at the end. As this is PII, it's not considered to be best practice in general. Is it possible to use other identifiers like subscriber key or subscriber ID?
Yeah, the answer is no. I would say that it's not really doesn't pose a security risk in that. Yes, okay. So you've got an email address that is used in this string. It's going to obviously retrieving a secure image. So I mean that's okay. But in an email client, I mean if you view the raw HTML, yes, you'll see the email address, but your email address is in there anyway. It's in the email. So, in short, no, it has to be an email address. You can't go and use something else or a hashed version of it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Janine asked, will the bot scenario exclude products that the customer has already bought?
Yeah, it's a good question. I need to go and read the specific scenario, why don't I just double check that now? Let's see what it says. So it says the bought scenario. Subscribers or visitors who bought the item passed in the parameter also bought these items. Does it? If you've already bought that product, the answer is I'm not sure. You can certainly go and set up a rule to go and. Could you go and set up a rule to go and exclude it again? Maybe if they've added to their cart or something in the past X amount of days. But I need to explore that. Yeah, that there may be a pattern that you can apply through rules to enable that.
Gotcha. This is an interesting case. Could the SKU of the visited product or the sale price, it seems possible to have it too, we could use for a specific email. For example, sending an email when the price of a specific SKU decreases.
Yes, I mean, I guess so. I mean, you've got your, if I just recap my slide. So you've got a few different data extensions. So the products data extension includes all kind of products that have been added to your catalog. So you could have you could be storing have a copy of it and have an SQL query that runs after the catalog file has been imported, effectively go and looking for changes and then to identify kind of specific products. Can you just read that question one more time, please?
Sure. 1 second here. Could the SKU of a visited product or the sale price, it seems possible to have it too, that we could use for a specific email? For example, sending an email when the price of a specific SKU decreases.
That's right. So, I mean, we can certainly listen for that event. That's right, because we're getting that raw data. We'd have to go and build an automation and use a query activity, but that could trigger a potential sale. I mean, and this is really kind of separate from email recommendations. I mean, you may or may not choose to include recommendations blocks, but we can be listening for those type of events or signals using the PI data extensions.
Perfect. How are you for time? I know we are
fine. Yeah, I'll go maybe squeeze in one more minute, one more question. I just want to consider other people.
That puts the pressure on me. Let's see.
Okay, gosh.
Can you use Einstein on two separate catalogs within the same business unit as we run a rewards catalog and a product catalog?
No, so you can only have one catalog per type. That is a product catalog, a content catalog, or a banner catalog per business unit. So you can't have different ones. You need to set them up in different business units. I mean, I don't need to cut off at this time. I don't have a hard stop, and I understand that maybe people are eager to have their questions answered, and others may need to leave. So that's fine. We can accept some more questions.
Well, as a reminder, this is being recorded.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone who has registered will receive a copy of it, and yeah, we get this. This is the bonus. This is the bonus episode since
Okay.
the last session.
Yeah.
Just going through here. Back to Affinity. What is an Affinity change trigger?
Again, so this Affinity change is actually it is available as a trigger. I've never seen it used or in action, and my understanding, and of course there's really not much documentation around this, is that it's based on it's triggered based on a user's affinity towards a specific product or product category. But I'd suggest that you kind of clarify that with Salesforce support based on your specific scenario. I'm really not an expert in affinity change. It's
Pritesh asks, can you talk a little bit more about localized recommendations? The documentation isn't super clear, and it was kind of an interesting point you brought up.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it is kind of clear, but I'll just go and pull up the localized recommendations. I'm looking at it now, actually. I'm on the help page. And so, let me just quickly go and share my screen, I think, just to provide some context. Let me go back to Zoom. I'm going to go and share my screen, and let's do Google Chrome, this one here. So here we see an example of our product catalog, and you can see that this is obviously pipe delimited here. Actually, this is the header in our product catalog, but you'll notice that in addition to the regular price display, which is a standard field, by using the string local_FRFR, regular price display, will be the localized price in France. And then, now these are just examples of price displays, but we could have product, we've also got one for product name in French, there we go, and US English. So you just go and include these additional ones in your catalog file, and you'll notice that when you import and step through the wizard and map your catalog file, it will detect these localized fields have been added. And then what you'll need to do, however, is that, for example, when sending an email, you need to use an additional locale parameter in your URL parameter, so you'll need to go and manually add this. As you can see, they've done there. And when you do that, that will return that localized recommendation. And similarly for web recommendation, you need to go and pass that ISO country code as a URL parameter to the JSON file. But yeah, I mean, just any of these standard fields, such as maybe the product link, it could be different for different country stores. Maybe online availability. Again, it's kind of some products might not be available in France, for example.
Perfect. All right, two more. How does that sound?
Sure.
One is, when implementing Collect.js, is it possible to connect multiple e-commerce storefronts to the same Marketing Cloud business unit?
I don't see why not. I mean, we'll just go and aggregate from all of them. And in fact, I've actually done a similar pattern. Allow me to explain that, and this is actually an interesting one. So just like you can have, in theory, multiple websites, just passing the same tracking data, I work with customers where they want to go and add all of the in-store purchases, that is from the point of sale systems, and use that to inform Einstein recommendations. And also in kind of one case, for every single customer that we knew who they were, they had this kind of loyalty club, which was even better. And so what you end up doing is effectively emulating that JavaScript call. I just have a script in Automation Studio that goes through, we import all the data from the point of sale system, and then I have a a script activity that goes and makes a post request to that JavaScript endpoint, including the products that they purchased and who that person was. And and it works. It works really well. And it does it extremely quickly. And it just flies. I've never seen it go so fast. Thousands of records, in a minute. That's again another pattern. So the answer is yes. Sorry for the long answer.
Okay. One to end on, I guess.
Yep.
And this is sort of kind of plays into a couple of things that we've talked about. How do you prevent recommending products that a customer purchased previously, like say 3 years ago, when the order history is coming from an ERP into a data extension? Is that something that Einstein can, like by enabling Einstein, can help do anything with?
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear to me. I mean, obviously they know that purchase history for that user, will it go and exclude that if they've purchased a product before? I'm not sure. And again, reaching out to Salesforce support, they would be able to escalate and clarify that. This is a fantastic question. I mean, I would assume so. And that data is available, but I'm not quite sure actually. So good question though.
No, I mean, listen, the questions have been great. Lots of kudos, and thanks for all of the knowledge and wisdom you've shared across the 4 sessions. And I think this kind of brings us to an end.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, John, for assisting in the moderation. Thank you, everyone who's joined. And I know that there's some of you who have attended all of the 4 sessions, which is kind of wonderful. We do plan to hold other Marketing Cloud sessions in the future, so please stay tuned for those. You can go and you can actually go to our blog on cloudkettle.com and go and subscribe to our newsletter to keep informed, and obviously go and subscribe to our YouTube channel for youtube.com/cloudkettle to catch up on past webinars and to keep updated of other great Salesforce related content. So thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
Thanks, Elliot. Take
Cheers.
care.
Thanks. Bye.